last Granite presentation, you said that Russia is a big threat to Australia. Is your view still the same? If yes, please explain why.
I think since I said that, I wrote a paper, the Russian threat, because in Australia we just missed the point. And again, it was very noticeable at conferences like APEC, where Russia was there in force marketing to the Chinese, and we had no one there, except Julia turned up and she gave a small talk in a room like this in the basement on education, which is valid, but it wasn't exactly selling our country to the Chinese. So the Russians would have had 50, 80, 120 people just marketing the Chinese on their resources. And they've got advantages. They're like us, they're resource rich, but they've got advantages of being able to reach China much more easily across land, as well as by sea. They're trying to develop Vladivostok as a major export port to Asia. So, they'll go and spend in 1 year $23 billion developing infrastructure around Vladivostok so they can serve commodities to China and Asia. And we kind of come up with a mining tax and a carbon tax. So we've been going the opposite direction, and we've assumed that we'll always sell our commodities to Asia, and we haven't respected enough that other people are getting highly competitive. And since I made the talk, there's been announcement after announcement of Russia doing a new major commodity deal with China again and again and again.
You predicted a Chinese free-floating currency by November 2013, I believe. Is this on track? And what does it mean for Australia at this time, over the next couple of years, and maybe a slightly longer view as well? Yeah, I think I still stick to that view. I still stick to that forecast. It's one of the more aggressive around, but I do think that China is very keen, from a point of view of a self-esteem, to be seen to be an equal power to the United States and Europe. And you're not going to be a respected equal power if you don't have a free-floating currency. So I think that whole notion of their currency being a reserve currency, they're very aware of it. That's why they're doing all these currency deals around the world. They've done the one with Australia, and we're not the first. And then they've just announced this week doing the same with the Bank of England over sterling. So direct sterling yuan swaps are now going to be in place with the Bank of England. So they're very much pushing the barrow of, hey, you can use our currency, you don't have to use the US dollar. All right? And if they're going to push that barrow institutionally, they're going to have to float their currency. And they keep widening the band of their fixed exchange rate, and the market is testing the band, if you like, that they have less and less often. In other words, the currency is finding pretty much its right, correct sort of area of value at the moment. So I think it's going to make it very easy for them to say, look, we've got a free-floating currency. But they do have to, that involves freeing up the capital account, and involves allowing far more aggressive and free flow of foreign investment, and they've been a little bit cautious on that, but they're definitely going down that path. So another year and a little bit, I think we could well be there. What does it mean for the Australian dollar? It's probably a positive, because I think the sooner the yuan is free floating, it'll be a boost for their economy, which will be a boost for our resource demand. I don't think their currency will appreciate that much further. So if anything, it's bullish, but again, I'd prefer we all had the same currency. China seems to have a number of structural issues. Central bank tightening credit, indicating a liquidity issue. What are your views on this?
Okay, all right. The liquidity crunch in China, it was over on Friday. It's already happened. There's no more. The credit crunch it's already finished in China. I wrote that yesterday. Okay. Again, it's one of those crises that people can cling to and sell. But all that happened was that there are new individuals with the change of government, new individuals in charge of different government departments and on different government committees. And they've decided that the speculators and the primary banking and the secondary lending markets were getting too much of a free ride. China manages its economy in a far more nuanced way than we do. For instance, when they had a bit of a property bubble
occurring. They didn't go out there and hit it on the head by raising interest rates for the whole country, as we would in Australia. They went, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to raise interest rates on third mortgages. In fact, for the moment, no individual can have more than 3 mortgages. Okay, if you already had them, you were fine, but you couldn't go beyond that for a period of several months. But for first home buyers, we're going to reduce the interest rate. So again, they're always looking to create equality, but take the winds out of sails of speculative bubbles. And I believe the credit crunch of last week, where rates got as high as 12% for a moment, I think, but only on the short-term money, that was, if you like, the authorities just saying to a lot of property developers, it's not going to be a free ride anymore. To a lot of the banks, no, we're not going to back you up when you overlend. So in a way, it was a big warning to the private sector that the private sector will probably listen to. So we've seen rates drop back already to about 6%. They're going to hover a little bit higher, but 6% on short-term money, it's not a disaster, and I think we'll drop down to 4.8 within a week. So the credit crunch has already sort of passed, but it was, if you like, a very important political moment in terms of how the government deals with both the primary and the secondary lending markets in China.
What is your take on the China dream? What are the opportunities economically for Australia in relation to the China dream? And does this have any potential negative implications for Australia's current economic relations with the rest of the world?
Yeah, I think Australia is focusing too much on China. We have to think Asia. So maybe use the China/Asia banner. Because, a country like Vietnam, we think Vietnam's a small country, it's 87 million people, so it's 4 times bigger than we are. So Asia is a big place, and what's happening in China is supporting the rest of Asia, and Japan is coming back online. But the key thing is, it's different for every business. It's different for every type of business, and it's different for every style of business within each industry. And for some businesses, the advice I gave a talk about 2 years ago at the Australian Tourism Conference, Export and Tourism Conference. And I said, the tourism industry was very depressed a couple of years ago because they said numbers are down from, this seriously was only 2 years ago. They were still thinking this way. Numbers are down from the United States, numbers are down from Britain, numbers are down from Europe, numbers are down from Japan. What are we going to do? It's a disaster, all right? I said, and I stood up there and I said, so how many people have an ad in the Shanghai Daily today? And there's no one. If you want to sell product into Asia, you have to be on the ground. You just can't have a clever internet website in Mandarin. You have to be on the ground. And there's 70 odd major cities in China, just in China. And I think New South Wales Tourism has decided it can't market to everyone, so it's picked sort of 4 or 8 cities that it's going to market aggressively to, because it couldn't deal with doing more than that anyway, or the number of people that they generate coming to New South Wales. So there's plenty of opportunity, but it's about getting on the ground, I think, in Asia. And it's about looking at places where other people haven't looked yet. So everyone's marketed to Beijing and Shanghai, but maybe I like to call them the Middle Kingdom, it just works well for China. The Middle Kingdom areas, there's plenty of business to be done out there, but it depends what you're selling and how you want to sell it. I've heard from a couple of people in Sydney that the Chinese government will go out of its way to facilitate people bringing new products into China. They think it will be, good for efficiency and productivity. So they'll actually facilitate your meeting people to sell product into China, as well as obviously China. We always think of China as wanting to export. They do want to import.